As we come to the back end of the schooling year, life is getting pretty stressful. There's so many assignments piling up with tests and, those impending exams coming up by the end of the year. And honestly, even the best of us at this sort of time will be feeling the heat. And all of this is just amplified and made worse by COVID, which is just going around and, putting all of these cities down into lockdown. So doing well academically in the other areas of your life can really depend on how well you manage stress. And honestly, if you get a system that you can kind of master around stress management, this can be the actual thing that allows you to have that competitive edge over your classmates. And honestly, this will just allow you to have a much more peaceful life. Hey guys, Archie here, a second year medical student, and on this channel, we focus on learning how to learn so we can spend our time on the things and people that matter the most to us. Today, we're going to be explaining this really, really important issue around stress, which affects students, but also the wider population. Honestly, in the modern generation, the competition within schools and universities to get into that dream course or dream degree is at an all-time high. And so along with this competition is just all the pressure that you put on yourself to try and achieve these sort of things that you want, which is why this is just such an important thing to look at now. So to help you guys out, I want to show you my personal way that I deal with stress in this video. And we're going to firstly talk about what stress is and how does it really impact us. Then we'll go into the causes of some of this stress and whether it's normal to have a certain amount of stress and how much stress is actually still normal. And then we go finally into how can we manage any of this. So there are many types of stress, which means we kind of have to figure out which ones there are first before we know how to deal with them. Stress in its most basic form is just a feeling of being overwhelmed and unable to cope with some of the things that are happening. And it can also come as an emotional pressure, and it's sort of that feeling that you feel when there's that upcoming test or exam that you're not too sure how it's going to go. Or it might happen when you've just got a lot of things on that you have to keep up with and you're not really getting any of it done. Or when there's a lot of pressure on you, usually that's put on by yourself to achieve a certain outcome or result. Now, why is stress important? Because it has impacts on our performance and more importantly, our health and well-being. So when stress goes unchecked and unmanaged, this can even lead to things like, just feeling quite fatigued all of the time. You're not really getting the sleep you want. You're getting headaches. And this is something that me and, many other university students are way too familiar with. So in more advanced cases, it can lead to, a tightness of your chest, a higher blood pressure, and ultimately it can affect your sleep quite a bit. Now I mentioned sleep again because it's just so important in affecting everything else that you do within your day. And so therefore can have an impact on your quality of life. So you never really want to sacrifice your sleep at all. And you might be feeling like you're refreshed and you're getting the hours of sleep, but it's actually really hard to gauge the quality of sleep that you actually got. And on the emotional side of things, you might be very familiar with how stress can lead to forms of anxiety, especially with high achievers like myself. This is a thing that we're all too familiar with. Now, luckily, I've realized this as being one of my weaknesses and I've been working very hard on it, and now it's improved quite a bit. It can also lead to panic attacks, which is usually experienced a lot more closer to assessments and even sometimes happening within like an exam or something like that. And for those who have experienced that, you know what I'm talking about. And as well, it can lead to burnout, which is a completely thing on its own, but that is just the, the end game, I guess, if stress goes too far. And even beyond that, we can even start to talk about depression. So now we have to kind of discuss a little bit about the causes and how to know if this is really being something that's affected you so that we can actually improve this. Let's go through two of the main causes for students like you and I. Probably it's to do with work or as well school, because this is a thing that just makes up a lot of our lives. There's the pressure of always trying to get that certain outcome, whether it's something that you've set for yourself, like a goal for like a certain grade, or something that your parents and family, friends are also hoping for you to achieve. And so consequently, a lot of this pressure is just self-imposed. So if this is an area of stress for you, it's really quite hard to just ignore the feeling and to just ignore everyone telling you these sort of things. So you might want to actually make it easier for yourself to get that sort of result or outcome if it's something that's realistic. So you need to figure out and dig deeper to figure out the real reasons why you're not hitting the milestones that you need to hit the goal that you eventually want. And the thing is, rarely is it ever that you're not putting enough effort in or that you don't really want it. It's usually something deeper than that. So it honestly might be something like your goal might be unrealistic. For example, you might be scoring as a below average student at the moment and you're hoping that just within 1 month, you're going to be able to get A's without any certain, substantial things that that for certain are going to be working. And we've all been in those cases where we have this sort of exam preparation for something that's going to come at the end of the year, and we think that this is going to be the be all and end all sort of thing. And the thing I want to tell you is that it's not. And I know you hear this all the time when it's like, oh, the ATAR doesn't really matter. But honestly, there is so much other things out there afterwards. It's just a matter of how quickly you want to get these things done. And the ATAR does give you that little bit of a boost in terms of how quick you can get into the degree you want or something like that. But that's all it is, because you can redo things, you can do other things, it just takes a little bit longer. And so it's not really the end of the world. And the other thing as well is, with health, your mental and physical side of things. So it might be that the mental image that you have about your physical fitness, so you want to figure out why that is. So you might be stressed about, being unfit. Is it to do with the diet that you have, the sort of workout plan that you have? You need to figure out exactly what is causing this stress and why it's not going away. Breaking things down will make it really easy for you to get that bird's eye view to pinpoint exactly what it is. Or maybe it's about, going to school or meeting new people, and then it's really about figuring out the why. Why are you scared? Why are you fearful of talking to new people? And what are the consequences to having that conversation? Do you potentially care too much about what people think of you, and why? And these things are really hard to do. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I can say all of this, but it's really quite hard to figure out the real reasons, which is why I just, wanted to put this video out there so that people can just get a start on some of these things. Because it really does make all the difference when you can start to answer these things and get a clearer idea of who you are and what you want to do. And a huge thing that I'm even guilty of myself sometimes is just having this sort of like outcome-based thinking to things. And this just adds a huge amount of stress in so many ways. The reason why I've talked about all these things so far is because we don't want to just put band-aids on the stress. We don't want to just like push it away and ignore it, because it's just going to come back with, more strength. So really in the end, they're just band-aids to the wound. We actually need to treat the wound itself. And that is the most permanent fix that you can kind of have for stress. And that comes with having systems and processes in place to deal with this. So now that we know a little bit more about stress, I just want to make it clear that stress is completely normal in all aspects of your life. And that's kind of a sign that you're actually doing things that are meaningful. Because really the only way to have no stress at all is if you actually literally do nothing. And then eventually it'll just come back, when you realize that you've just not been doing anything at all. And that's kind of what happens, right? Like you procrastinate a certain task because it's stressful, and so you try and do less, just to feel a little bit better in that certain moment, but then it will come back to bite you. And it's so normal that I expect that you guys probably feel a level of stress even watching this video, and that's why you're still here. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I am much the same. There are still things that I stress about, even though you might see me being super productive or whatever. There are a lot of things that stress me, whether it be about, what's going on in my life or one of my businesses, or dealing with just the stuff at med school as well. And I think that's quite a comforting thing to realize that, this is not just something you are just, dealing with alone. There's a lot of people who feel the same way. And especially this happens in the, upper years of high school and into university as well. And why is this? Because a lot of the time you are competing against other people. The friends that you've grown up with, now you're trying to fight for, a spot in med school, for example. And so there's a lot of pressure because, like even when you're in year 12, you've heard all the other stories of people who have done well from family or friends, and then you have this expectation set for yourself as well. And it's honestly like a lot on your shoulders having so many people say these things to you. The most overarching thing that I say to deal with stress is focusing what's not in your control and what actually is in your control. And for the most part, stress is luckily something that is in your control. And now that you know that it is in control, what can you do about it? So if you really want to make a change to how you're interpreting things, how you're feeling about things, then it comes a lot back down to psychology. And one of the main things that clinical psychologists use quite a lot of is this thing called chain analysis. The main idea of chain analysis is that it allows you to figure out the reason and why there's these particular behaviors that you might exhibit. Because if you understand the things and the way you do them, that is the first step for you realizing then how can you change these sort of behaviors and attitudes. And ultimately what this will allow you to do is to figure out those kind of marginal gains, the things that you can do day by day to improve how you're dealing with these sort of things. So really the first thing that you want to figure out is kind of the behavior that you would like to change. So for example, if you are feeling stressed about an assignment, it might be that the target behavior is you want to stop procrastinating that assignment. So the thing with this chain analysis is to now figure out the next most logical thing, which is, what is the sort of event that caused this. And honestly, with this sort of thing, it's really trying to be as specific as possible to figure out, what are the events that led up to this behavior. Then you need to go even further with this to figure out, okay, there's these sort of events, and I guess, what sort of vulnerabilities allowed you to then have those events occur that then led to that behavior. After that, honestly, like this is just such a self-reflective and journaling exercise to figure out, what emotions happened during this sort of progression of events. This will just really allow you to see, you know, how this is kind of occurring, and then you can figure out where the easiest place to begin is. And another thing to put things into perspective is to think about the consequences of continuing to have this, you know, behavior that you want to get rid of, or, you know, rather thinking about, you know, what are the short-term consequences as well compared to the long-term consequences. And this will kind of just motivate you as well to see that, okay, this is something that I genuinely want to improve on. Now, with all of this information written down in a Word document or something like that, and you've really just like poured, I guess, your soul into what you've written and been super honest with yourself, then you can start to see some of the gaps or some of the weaknesses that you can provide some solutions to. You might realize, honestly, that the things that you've been doing are not working. And that might seem like it's quite, I guess, demotivating to hear that, but now you realize, and now you know there's things you can do to improve on it. Probably one of the biggest things to think about when you're creating a solution is you need some sort of system to help you out, some sort of system that's going to allow you to create good habits that can then go on autopilot to help you throughout, you know, these tougher times. And if you already have systems in place that you might have been learning from this YouTube channel, well, that means there's some tweaking to do, some upgrading, and, you know, that's something that we can work on. Now, honestly, the most important thing around all of this is how can you build certain skills so that this can help you with managing stress. And honestly, you know, the research kind of shows that people often think that things are not in control as much as they actually might be. So often people are just underestimating how much control they actually have. Now, if you realize there are these certain skills, whether it be, I guess, how you deal with certain emotions, how you deal with time management, if you're doing pre-study, you know, a lot of these skills can help throughout all of the parts of dealing with stress. So a skill honestly might just be like keeping up a nighttime routine and a schedule. And all these things might seem quite trivial, but the thing is that these things need to be small and they'll add up when you get really good at all these sort of skills, and then stress will be not as hard as it was before. So overall, the huge thing is that you need to think about the ways you can change literally the way that you live and go throughout your life in order to mitigate the effects of stress, but also at the same time mitigate the risk of stress even happening. Luckily, this is what this whole YouTube channel is about, is helping you guys. And I also have a Discord channel where I constantly, you know, mentor and coach a few people to help them out. So no matter where you are, you know, there's really no reason that if you're not applying some of these systems and really being reflective and journaling about this quite a lot, that you can't actually, you know, achieve a more controlled life.